And with some thoughts on what this all means. First of all, I'd like to talk about the way we use the words sexism and racism. These are words used in lots of different ways and other similar isms. Sometimes we mean prejudice, right? Sometimes when we say someone is a sexist or a racist, we mean that they have particular beliefs that are that way. Sometimes we're talking about structural oppression. Sometimes we're talking about these systems of privilege and oppression that cover all of the individuals in a system, right? That only go in one direction. As we talked about earlier, prejudice can go in any direction, but structural oppression only goes in one direction. And sometimes we mean the combination of both. There's a quote from Patricia Beidel, prejudice plus institutional power, meaning when someone has prejudiced beliefs and they're in a position within an institution that gives them power to enforce those. So you may have heard the phrase that black people can't be racist, for example. That's what this refers to, this idea that because racism is structural, because black people are in fact not in power in our society, don't have structural power, they therefore can't engage in structural oppression. That's what that phrase means. Structural oppression isn't the result of bad people. This here is Bull Connor, the sheriff who is famous for setting dogs on civil rights protesters and fire hoses. So certainly there exist horrible people, prejudiced, mean, cruel people in positions of power who discriminate against other groups that they hate. That's definitely a true thing that happens. But that's not really what's going on with structural oppression. It's part of it, but structural oppression happens from good people as well, people who are participating in these institutions because you have to be involved in society, and are replicating those power structures. So one example of this is the difference in sentencing between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. This was a racist policy that was passed that discriminated against people that use crack cocaine, which is more commonly black people in cities, as opposed to people who use powder cocaine, which is more often a kind of stockbroker, richer person's drug, right? Now, if a police officer goes out and is entirely fair and is not racist at all and arrests, one rich white stockbroker for having powder cocaine and arrests one poor black man who he finds with crack cocaine and sends them both to court on the same day, right? There's going to be very different outcomes for those two people, right? One of them is likely to go to prison, one of them is not, and you are well aware which one it is, I hope. And so that police officer, even though they themselves weren't acting out of malice or a desire to be unfair, by participating in this structure, increased the amount of structural oppression, increased the power of structural oppression overall. And so what's the conclusion here? Because oppression isn't the result of bad intentions, it's not the result of us being a bad person, it's a result of us being part of these structural oppressions. And in order to change that, we have to actively work, doing nothing, just going with the flow, just accepting society as it is, just, reassuring yourself that you're not a bad person, that you're not doing anything, not going out of your way to oppress anyone, isn't enough, that's not going to change society, that instead, if we want these structural oppressions to end, we have to actively fight to change the way our social system is organized, the way our institutions are designed.